Shadow the Hedgehog. This game holds an interesting place in the history of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. It was the second main series game to be launched on non-Sega consoles, and the first to introduce the new 4Kids-based actors for the cast. It's the only game in the series to use a branching storyline and level format, and it executed the narrative tree in a unique way. It arguably paved the way for the franchise going forward. There was just one small problem. The path it paved went straight into a tree, at 100 miles an hour. Yeah, it's no great controversy to say Shadow's first and only self-titled outing was a bit of a disaster, even ignoring the baffling decision to make a Sonic game where the lead character was a gun-toting anti-hero who swore,
"Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?"
The story was overly complicated, the gameplay was clunky and poorly executed, and the whole thing feels like someone tried to make a third-person shooter and a mod for Sonic Heroes, which I'm not 100% sure isn't somewhat accurate. The game manages to avoid ranking at the very top of worst Sonic game ever lists, if only because its immediate successor was Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, aka worst game ever made contender from 2006 to 2013, but Shadow still ranks pretty high on a lot of people's lists. Which leads to the question, could it be good? Sure, it's buggy and poorly optimized, but if the developers had been given more time to polish these things, would the game be great? No. But if they had even more time to see what worked and what didn't work with the game, could it have been good? In other words, how exactly could you say Shadow the Hedgehog? God, this video is a bad idea. First off, let's talk about what in the game already works. Don't worry, this won't be too long. I'm going to be honest, I can't really disagree with the true ending's existence. I know some people have argued the game having one definitive ending feels like a cop-out or that it misses the point of the rest of the game, but let's be real here. If they ever wanted to continue the series, they needed just one ending to be canon. Better to just put that canon ending in from the start. Besides, it's not like this is the first or last time the series had one definitive final scenario after getting every other ending before it. Kinda counterintuitively though, I also really like the idea of the multiple paths system in the game. A lot of games do a sort of branching storyline based on moral choices, especially nowadays, but this is the first and maybe only game I can think of where making different choices actually changes what level you play next. It gives the game a very unique feeling, and honestly adds a lot of replay value. A shame that replaying is kind of the biggest issue. Yes, Sonic Adventure may have started the issue of having to play the same level multiple times to truly beat the game, and Sonic Heroes exasperated it, but Shadow the Hedgehog is where it arguably reached its apex. In order to unlock the true ending, you have to beat the game 10 times. Now, thankfully this isn't quite as bad as it might sound. Like I said, branching levels means that in each playthrough, you're usually going to be playing different stages. Plus, each run only has 6 levels, and while the stages can sometimes be long, in general, each run isn't that arduous to complete. The problem is, and there's really no good way to say this, you still have to play pretty much every stage multiple times. The different choices you make in each stage to take the different paths can add some interesting twists on each level, but a lot of the time it really does just feel like doing the same thing again and again. It doesn't help that for most of the objectives, you have to play through the whole stage completely. And unless you're on one of the really interesting stages, what you're doing isn't going to be that different from what you do while just trying to reach the exit. But hey, there are 22 levels and only 10 endings, so how bad can it be? After all, in Sonic Heroes, you had to play the full game, every level, 4 times to get the true ending. Here, you thankfully don't need to play every level 4 times. In fact, the ending levels only have to be played twice each, one for each route through, as these levels only have a hero and dark route in each. The problem, of course, is that you actually have to get to these final levels, and that means having to beat the 5 stages leading to them. Probably the worst hit is the first 3 sets of levels. Just thinking about it mathematically, since the second and third level of each run can only be selected from 3 stages each, you're going to have to play at least 2 of these stages 4 times at a minimum. And then of course there's the very first level, Westopolis. Like I mentioned, in some stages the different objectives can feel pretty similar to what you just do on a normal playthrough. Westopolis is a key example of this, as both its hero and dark routes simply task you with killing all of a certain type of thing. Yes, Sonic endorses alien genocide. The problem is, since these guys attack you regardless of what you're doing, you're probably going to be killing most of them anyways while taking the neutral route of just speeding through the level. And considering the final enemies of each type are just past the ending at the Chaos Emerald, you're still playing through the whole stage, again, with very few differences from how you'd normally play it. Doing each route once and playing the stage 3 times? A bit tedious and a little redundant. Having to play it 10 times with barely anything changing, all for the sake of completing the game over and over again? Yeah, no thanks. Honestly, this feels like such an easy problem to fix, and it's one that looking at the game, you might think they do. Just don't require the player to play through the whole thing to get the endings. You have a nice, cool-looking level map, just have them select which level they want to play out of what they've unlocked. Sure, you still have to play half the levels 3 times, and the other half twice if you stick to the idea of unlocking all the routes, but again, in Sonic Heroes you had to play through every level 4 times, and maybe one of them would have a major difference in how you played. Now, one thing that might be lost with this fix is the library of sequences. You see, if you actually want to 100% complete Shadow the Hedgehog in terms of unlocking literally every available thing on the disc, you have to play through the game 326 times in order to do every possible sequence of levels, bosses, and cutscenes in the game. This unlocks all the library sequences, all 326 of which have a unique name based on the themes explored by the runs. If that sounds like a lot, it is! The only person I can find online who says they did it states that it took 53 days and over 181 hours of playtime. Of course, really this is closer to 163 different routes, each performed twice since the final level has 2 routes, which just lead to different bosses and different final cutscenes. Well, except for the true neutral path, where literally the only difference between the 2 endings is the cutscene. You fight the same boss no matter what. That's another thing. Even if you made it so you didn't have to play through the exact same level over and over again, this game reuses content and assets more often than I reuse a pair of jeans. The game has 8 bosses, one of which is only fought in the true ending, so really it's closer to 7. Of those 7, 3 are available to be the final boss of the run. Black Doom, aka the alien big bad of the game, a tag team between this army guy, more on him later, and Sonic, and Eggman's egg dealer robot. Yes, for the 10 different endings, there are only 3 bosses, and you fight the egg dealer in the same environment on both of the true neutral fights, so there are 3 different backgrounds for each fight. The other 4 bosses are one of Black Doom's pets, who you can stumble across in 2 levels, 2 incredibly generic and unmemorable gum machines, and who can forget Eggman in the Egg Breaker.
Damn it. You know what they say, the more the merrier.
It's not just bosses either. The levels reuse themes and assets a lot. Like I said, there are 22 different stages. Of these, 3 take place in Ruin City environments, 2 take place in a cyberscape, 2 take place in a floating ruin setting, 2 are set inside an alien comet that the evil aliens came to Earth on, and a grand total of 5 stages take place on the space colony Ark. 3 in the present and 2 in the flashbacks. That's a total of 14 levels, all of whom you wouldn't be able to remember the name of when you see them, except thinking all the ruined city shots are from Westopolis. Even the ones that don't share the exact same theme tend to reuse assets. Prison Island is supposed to be a prison with a theme of pollution, but it looks so similar to the jungle-themed Death Ruins that some fan wikis give it the same theme, not to mention the literal iron jungle that acts as the neutral route's penultimate level. Add in the 3 quirkier Eggman lairs that don't look the same but serve the same purpose, and the 2 secret military bases with slightly different gimmicks, and pretty much every level can be exchanged with another with very few people noticing. Which admittedly makes some sense considering the whole branch and path thing, but considering players are still expected to play through all of them to get the true ending, it's still baffling. So yeah, if I had to give a suggestion to the developers back then, I would say, do something to make every level visually distinct. Like, I know I just mentioned the Eggman layers, and they are pretty similar in gameplay terms, but they honestly do a decent job at standing apart, if only visually, not functionally or gameplay-wise. Though, admittedly, Circus Part might stand out just because of the opening cutscene.
Where's that damn 4th Chaos Emerald?
I should probably talk about the actual story, shouldn't I? Look, I'm going to be honest. I don't think you can have the branching paths and unique level stage choosing of this game and an even slightly decent story. For the branches to work, Shadow has to be able to switch morality and who he listens to basically at the drop of the hat. Granted, this doesn't mean the story is the best it could be in this state, because it absolutely isn't, but it's a difficult situation to try to figure out. So, what is the story, and what major problems can be fixed while keeping it ultimately the same game? Well, the basic story that stays constant throughout every run of the game is as follows. Shadow the Hedgehog, an amnesiac hero who seemingly died at the end of his debut game, Sonic Adventure 2, is somehow alive and well, despite falling from space without the power of the Chaos Emerald protecting him anymore. He doesn't know how or why, and he seems to barely even know who he is. Suddenly, aliens arrive and invade the planet. Yeah, aliens are here now. You just kinda have to accept that. Shadow is approached by the leader of these aliens, Black Doom, and told that if he helps Black Doom by collecting the Chaos Emeralds, Black Doom will tell him the truth about his past. That is a lot of Black Doom in a row. Shadow is skeptical, but since apparently none of the characters he met in Sonic Heroes have been of any help, he decides he might as well give it a shot. As you might imagine, from here the story goes a lot of different ways, and we're gonna have to talk in broad strokes. In general, the commander of G.G.M.A.N, which if you don't know is this world's military, receives word of the alien invasion, and seems to take special note that Shadow seems to have been spotted near the aliens and orders all of them killed, even if Shadow is firmly on the hero side, but whatever. Then shortly afterward, while Sonic and friends are also fighting the aliens, E.G.G.M.A.N decides to step in and declare war on, well, pretty much everyone. Yeah, E.G.G.M.A.N is weirdly morally gray here. He seems to still be evil as he is working against the military and the quote-unquote heroes, but he's also very actively working against the extremely evil aliens. It's all a little odd. Oh, also, E.G.G.M.A.N is now mass-producing robots based on Shadow. For some reason, the first time Shadow sees one, he deduces that he is also apparently a robot, even if E.G.G.M.A.N never gave any indication of such in prior levels. Oh, yeah, you might not know about that, even if you play the game. Yeah, there is actually a way to get E.G.G.M.A.N to imply Shadow is one of the androids. If you reach Mad Matrix and take the dark route, E.G.G.M.A.N will say Shadow has no past shortly before the level where Shadow first sees a Shadow android and becomes convinced that he must be one himself. It actually makes more sense than the standard neutral route, let down a little by having to fight the exact same boss 2 levels in a row. Honest question here, what if Shadow had black blood? Like, it would make some sense in the universe, since this game's spoilers reveal Shadow is partially created from Black Doom DNA. And it could allow for some edgy gore without actually raising the rating. Not to mention the possibility for Shadow mistaking it for oil and making the whole android thing seem less stupid. Especially since the androids look distinctly less smooth than Shadow. Okay, so, aliens. This isn't the only time in the franchise where they've shown up, hell, it's not even the first if you count Sonic X, but it is the first game where they've appeared, and it can be jarring for some. Obviously, the series has messed around in space before, especially since Shadow was created on a space colony, but this is still the first time it's ever been mentioned that aliens both exist and have come to the planet before in the not-too-distant past. There's also some serious retconning of Shadow's origin, what with him apparently being part alien now. I honestly don't mind it that much. It's definitely a big retcon, but it does make some sense, and it does at least explain what makes him supposedly the ultimate life form, as opposed to just another hedgehog like Sonic and Amy. Huh. Do you think Amy could use Chaos Control if she tried? Like in Sonic Adventure 2's battle mode, she could freeze her opponent in place, similar to what Chaos Control does in that mode, but it's not explicitly the same move, and it's the closest she's ever come to using it in the games. But like, all the people we've seen be able to use it are the Hedgehogs, so logically she should be just as able to, right? Or is Sonic's superpower partially able to boost him up to Shadow and Silver's ability with it? For that matter, if Chaos Control is unique to Sonic and Shadow in the present, is Silver being able to use it to do with him being in the future? Or is it because he has telekinetic powers? Or is it something to do with the whole timey-wimey thing going on in Sonic 06? I've gotten way off track. What was I talking about? So, yeah, the aliens thing is jarring, but it sort of works. But you know what doesn't work?
And if you find Shadow with the black aliens, then kill them all.
But sir, isn't Shadow on our side?
I gave you an order, soldier.
This is the gun commander. No name given. He's just called the commander. When he was a little boy, he lived on the Ark. He was best friends with Maria, who was like a sister to him. He blames Shadow for her death and the death of everyone else on the Ark. He's currently leading the organization that literally put a bullet in her. There's just so much wrong with this whole subplot. It feels like it was made entirely because A, they needed a reason for the gun soldiers to attack Shadow, and B, they wanted a final boss for the villainous groups that wasn't just Sonic. Unfortunately, not only is his boss fight more or less unidentifiable as him because of the mech he uses, but literally everything about his reasoning and motives is poorly executed. Like, okay, even if you assume he didn't know Gun was the organization who raided the Ark, which, wow, how could he not? It's not like they did it because of anything Shadow did. If anything, he should be trying to destroy Black Doom by any means necessary, since he is one of the few characters in the entire game to know for a fact that Doom was involved in the whole thing. And he was the one who created Shadow. Plus, if he was the commander of Gun for any significant amount of time, then how the hell did Gun think Sonic was responsible for Shadow's crime in Sonic Adventure 2? Considering he would not only know about Eggman raiding the complex that was holding Shadow, but also have an ingrained memory of who Shadow is and what he looks like. Hell, why didn't he have Shadow killed as soon as he assumed command, back when Shadow was in Gun's custody on Prison Island? And why does he have one yellow eye? Look, maybe if there was some halfway decent writing for all the cutscenes, you could make the branching storylines make sense. You could have the Shadow, androids, and aliens fit into the story. Hell, you could even make Commander No Name Given work with enough actual thought. But there's one thing that really makes Shadow's story not make sense. He has no arc. Sort of. And no, not that arc. The game seems to want Shadow to be this morally gray character. It wants him to be deep and complex and change his loyalties on a dime, but that's not how most players are gonna play him. They're either gonna go pure villain, maximizing their friendship stat with Black Doom and the aliens, they're gonna go pure hero, and be best friends with Sonic and Tails and the human beings, or they're gonna go neutral and snap Eggman's neck, no really. It definitely doesn't help that by the time you reach the 4th level, you can't really make any big swings. If you're going pure neutral, you can suddenly become a great hero or total monster, but if you're on the top or bottom path already, the most extreme move you can make is to suddenly go pure neutral and suddenly have Shadow become convinced he's an android for even less reason than normal. But why would you do that? Why would you deviate from the path set out? What actual reason does the story give you to do it? The only reasons you would take any path is to either reach a different ending or level than you got before, or because the other path or paths are too annoying to deal with. What arc does Shadow get if you go from pure evil to pure good? Okay, so I'm about to do what I like to call script doctoring or creative speculation, and that other people might call making a fanfic rewrite. Just go with me here. What if the game had a true story playthrough? One where, instead of a blank slate who's at the whims of who the player makes him listen to, Shadow actually has a story and character arc that he follows. And what if he went through all 23 stages in it? Yes, I know I've been saying 22, there's one final stage in the true ending, just work with me here. Shadow, lost and confused, turns to Black Doom, in the hope that his proposal of telling him the truth is genuine. He journeys through the world, gathering the Chaos Emeralds for the Black Arms, slowly taking time to do even more for them to help their conquest even further. Slowly, he loses himself, finding himself lost in hatred for humanity and blind loyalty to Black Doom. Finally, they gather enough Chaos Emeralds to launch their preliminary strike from the Ark's cannon, with Black Doom sending Shadow to shoot it and threaten the humans. Except, it turns out Eggman planned ahead, and sometime after the events of Sonic Adventure 2, he modified the Ark so that when the cannon was fired, the Chaos Emeralds it used would disappear, going back down to Earth somewhere. Enraged, Black Doom sends Shadow to find Eggman and demand the location of the Chaos Emeralds, all without giving him any answers. Soon, Shadow discovers evidence that whoever the original Shadow the Hedgehog was, he actually died some time ago, only for Dr. Eggman to create near-perfect android copies. Soon, Eggman confirms that the Shadow who thought he was real was simply a rogue android. Siding with another of Eggman's rogue creations, he manages to defeat the Doctor, and prepares to strike the finishing blow, only for Eggman to admit he was lying. As Shadow fell to Earth, Eggman tasked his robots with finding and recovering Shadow, and though Shadow ended up escaping without his memories, Eggman was able to build androids based on his body. Once again, at a dead end, as Eggman reveals the Chaos Emeralds have been scattered around the world once more, Shadow prepares to return to the space colony Ark when he finally remembers. He flashes back to the Ark, to his time with Maria, and he remembers what happened that fateful day. He remembers Gun raiding the station, killing everyone on board, and fatally wounding Maria, only for her to send Shadow to the planet below, not with a wish for revenge, but with a plea for him to protect the human race and all those who lived on the planet below. Shocked by the realization that he had been acting exactly counter to Maria's wishes, he turns to Gun and his once friend, Rouge. He offers to help them in any way he can, and they tasked him with preventing the Black Arms from gathering the Chaos Emeralds for themselves, despite the commander making it clear he is not happy about them working with Shadow, as opposed to against him. Shadow gathers the Chaos Emeralds once again, this time collecting all 7 of them. And he and Sonic raid the Black Comet, prepared to face off against Black Doom, and with Shadow believing he finally has all the answers to his past. And then, the final scenario plays out. The commander sneaks aboard the rocket up to the comet, and he reveals what he saw as a child. After Shadow and Sonic have seemingly defeated Black Doom, he freezes the whole cast with microscopic spores. Except Shadow. He reveals that he and Gerald created Shadow from his own DNA. Shadow, shaken by this revelation, nonetheless stands up and finally defeats Black Doom for real, using the power of the Chaos Emeralds. It's revealed that Black Doom's influence and the persecution from Gun was what drove Gerald insane, leading to the backup sequence from the final story from Adventure 2. And the President and Commander reflect on how, despite all they did, it was ultimately his creations which saved the world. Shadow gives a final goodbye to his past aboard the space colony Ark, and the game ends. Now, does that sound like a good story for a video game? Probably not. Does it sound better than the story as featured in the game? I think so, only because it's an actual semi-coherent story, rather than 326 possible stories, about 9 of which make any sense. You might have noticed that, aside from the whole replay thing, I don't have that much to say about the gameplay. Part of that, admittedly, is because I'm not a game designer in any way, as opposed to writing, which I at least have amateur experience with. However, it's also partially because, honestly, the gameplay isn't terrible. It's not amazing, admittedly, but the gunplay is actually surprisingly fun, and the weapons are varied enough to be fun to use. And honestly, with some polishing up, the standard platforming and vehicle mechanics wouldn't be that bad. I think this game gets a lot of flack for taking itself and its attempts to be dark and gritty seriously, which is understandable, but to be honest, I really think it can work if enough time and thought goes into it. It's just that, well, not enough time and thought did go into it, unfortunately. Actually, if there is one thing about the gameplay that I will point out, it's the chaos meters, or morality meters, or whatever these blue and red meters are called. You fill them up by destroying certain enemies in a level. Usually killing gun soldiers fills up the red meter, killing aliens fills up the blue meter, and Eggman's robots are centrists who should be able to fill up either one, but we're robot racists I guess, so they always fill up blue. The meters themselves are fine, and maxing them out stealthily gives you infinite ammo for a short time, but the key selling points are the moves you can perform with the Chaos Emerald, Chaos Control, and Chaos Blast. Chaos Blast is fine. It's not perfect, but like, it's a basic screen clearing move that kills pretty much everyone around the player, which can be useful, especially since a fair chunk of dark missions involve killing enemies, and you can even use it multiple times in a row with one fill of the meter. Chaos Control is probably the biggest flaw with game design, at least biggest flaw that can't be fixed with bug fixes and polish. It basically sends Shadow flying to the end of the level, which is fine sometimes, especially for neutral runs since you're going to be killing a fair few dark-type enemies to progress, but if you're actually going for a mission, you'll basically zip right by at least one of the required objectives, meaning you're going to need to backtrack. I honestly think the boss fight area would have been more useful in normal gameplay, as it freezes time similar to how it worked in Sonic Adventure 2's battle mode. Could have been a bit more useful, honestly. But yeah, that's how Shadow the Hedgehog could have been fixed. Allow players to choose levels they've unlocked at will, add some more varied boss fights, make the levels more distinct from each other, fix chaos control, and finally add in a campaign mode where you can play all the levels in one sequential story. I don't have an outro for this video. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I know it was kind of a weird one from my usual uploads. Hopefully I'm going to be making more videos sometime soon. I've got a really interesting stream series planned for the 19th. You might want to check that out on my Twitch channel, Sorio99. Yeah, just sort of recording this off the cuff. It's almost midnight. I should probably get to bed. Just going to add some finishing touches to this. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Another day of hope and tragedy.